Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, depending on your time zone. Welcome to the latest Redshift Espresso demo. We'll just give a little bit more time for people to join. I can see people are joining now. So just while you join, we'll give everybody just a couple of moments to get settled in and ready for our webinar. Okay, so looking at the connections there, seems like we have people still joining, but just in view of starting on time, I'd just like to welcome everyone again to our latest Espresso demo with Redshift. I'm Rachel Gray, I'm Marketing Director, and I'd just like to welcome my two co-presenters today, Tom Emilio, who's our Principal Sales Engineer, and Jorge Montiel, who's our Head of Pre-Sales, who will be talking to us around our latest webinar around cyber resilience, streamlining asset management, threat detection, and remediation. We do want this to be as interactive as we can possibly make it with the constraints of time. If you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them into the question tab. If you have any network issues, you can always pop them into the chat, but we want to take the questions from the question tab. And without further ado, I will hand over to Tom to start us off on this webinar. Thanks, Tom.
Great, yeah, thanks, Rachel. Let's dive in here. All right, let's take a look at our agenda. So ultimately what you're going to get out of this webinar, you're going to learn about the automated discovery and monitoring of your entire network perimeter. We're going to be focusing on detecting and mitigating lookalike domain threats via email, web, and brand impersonation. And we'll ultimately be demoing two of our different products, Hardenise and OnDomain. So first thing on the agenda, right? So we're going to talk about how Hardenise can power the effortless asset discovery for robust security. Then we'll be able to use Hardenise to prioritize remediation from scope to action, right? Identify issues and how to fix them. Then we'll talk about synergizing the data between Hardenise and domain. So we have some cool features there to share the data across. And then we'll be more focused on OnDomain, unmasking impersonation attacks through automation, targeting top impersonation threats, a data-driven approach. I'll let you take it away, Jorge.
Thank you, Tom. And yes, so basically we're always presented with this ever-changing landscape. There are many tools available out there to secure and to monitor our environment. But all of them together are very hard to control and to keep an eye on. As good as technical people can be, engineers can be, they're basically too many acronyms. And sometimes because of the open source side of things, of these standards, documentation is fragmented or probably even wrong in some cases. And by the time you get to the bottom of things and how to get around this, something has already changed. And obviously, everybody knows this is no surprise, it's been happening for a few years now, is the rise of cloud computing. And it's very flexible. It's very friendly to create all sorts of kind of hosts for storage, for load balancing, etc. But these, because it's so easy, we end up creating too many of them, and also not always following the best practices when it comes to configuration, when it comes to security. And then at the same time, there's no inventory that can give us the right visibility so that if there are issues in terms of, again, misconfiguration or security, we can get a handle of them and get them fixed in a timely manner. Because eventually, when somebody complains or when you have an actual security breach, then you'll find out about it, but you want to avoid having issues, performance issues, or security breaches. But there is another way, of course, and what we're going to try to show you is, as part of our platform, that we're going to get an asset inventory in place in which you're going to discover not only the assets that are yours and how they're configured, but also if there are issues, trying to solve them. And this could be around also network visibility, being able to see the top 1,000 UDP and the top 1,000 TCP ports, so that you can see if any of them are open and may cause any security concerns. But also, very important, our customers see a lot of value when it comes to the certificate and the PKI monitoring, and when it comes to, for instance, just being able to have an eye on when certificates are expired. And now that a lot of certificate authorities are putting in place practices like maximum 90-day validity when it comes to certificates, it becomes more important to have the right tool to monitor the expiry of these. And then, of course, a lot of security operations tooling to help you keep an eye on all of these things on a business as usual basis.
Awesome. So that was, Jorge kind of queuing up our hardenized solution. So now we're going to switch gears and talk about domain impersonation. So really, this is a problem that has an infinite scale. So what do we mean by that? We take redshift.com, and now you have all these other variations of the domain, right? It could be a TLD swap, so redshift.info instead of .com now. There could be typo squatting, right? All it takes is one character difference for it to be a completely different domain. You have different country TLDs. You have script spoofing, right? So in that example, rather than an I, it's a 1, right? So all it takes is one character difference, and you have a completely different domain, like I mentioned. And that's why, in terms of sheer scale, if you're an IT or InfoSec organization, purchasing these domains defensively, it's just going to be endless, right? You're going to pay tons of money to register domains, to renew them. And, there's another way that scales using technology, using AI and machine learning. And that's what we're going to kind of further dive into with our on-domain solution. So let's talk about some of the things we see out in the wild that bad actors, cyber criminals are doing, right? So, first and foremost, it's really common to just see SSL certificates deployed and issued on these lookalike domains or websites or landing pages, right? It's very easy to push SSL onto these hosted environments, right? 10 years ago, it was a lot harder to configure an SSL certificate. You needed to have a CSR bundle and a couple mistakes and it wouldn't work, right? Nowadays, you can just deploy them really easily. The other thing that's really common is bad actors are going to absolutely rip off the content of the brand they're impersonating. So what we mean by that is it's going to be the exact logos, exact colors, fonts, right? It's going to resemble and sometimes even look better than the actual, brand that they're impersonating. The other thing that is really common is I think the days of poorly configured, poorly coded emails or websites or landing pages, right? That's over. It's very easy to have a template to push a site live that's going to be responsive. It's going to look great on mobile. It's going to look great in the browser, right? These are things that we're kind of up against in the wild. All right, so before we get into our demos, it's kind of helpful to understand, what's actually happening in terms of, cyber attacks. So we took a particular cyber attack that occurred this past June, so June 2023. And what happened was there was over 6,000 phishing sites that were impersonating about 100 brands. And they were very popular ones that, a lot of us, I'm sure, are familiar. So it was different apparel, footwear, clothing brands. The screenshot here is showing a lookalike site for Puma. And if you kind of look in where that red arrow is, it's puma-italia.com, right? So going back to our, lookalike slide there, it's very easy to change that. So really what the bad actor's goal, right? Let's trick the victims into logging into the bogus site. Now, what their intentions were from there, we can make some assumptions. Did they care about compromising an account to buy $100 pair of Puma shoes, or was it really maybe more about hoping that the victim recycled their password, maybe for a corporate environment, for Okta, for SSO, something like that, right? There's a lot of nefarious things that can come here, but ultimately are really deriving from, credential harvesting and things like that. Just to peel back the layers. So this is really interesting. So for this particular cyber attack, there was this concept called domain aging. And this is all the same story we're talking about here. So domain aging, what they found with those 6,000 sites is the domains were registered between 90 and almost 2 years old, right? So think about that. That's not a bad actor buying a domain on Sunday, spinning up a website on Monday, right? This is a strategic, orchestrated attack where they intentionally bought these domains and allowed Google search to do what it does and index them, right? So on the right-hand side, this screenshot is from the report, Clark, South Africa, right? The first thing that pops up, Clark shoes, South Africa, you can see there's HTTPS on it. It's the first thing in Google, right? So it must be legitimate, right? This is how your average user, maybe not so tech savvy as most of us on this call, right? So this is how easy, bad actors can really get to appear in the first page of Google. And of course, there's some assumptions made from there that the page is legit. All right, so we're going to switch gears, no more slides. We're going to hop into the demo. So I'm going to have Jorge, he's going to jump in and start showing Hardenized, and then we'll go over to the on-domain platform.
Sure, thank you, Tom. So in effect, you should be looking at my screen now. And what we have right here is just a small inventory of a few domains, in this case, Redshift domains, and with certain information. So the first thing is we have a list of domains. Then we have their status when it comes to DNS. Then the inventory when it comes to subdomains and certificates. Registrant information that was used, in some cases protected, in some cases is public. The registrar, so this is customers find this very useful when they have an estate much larger than ours that needs consolidating into a single registrar, so that they can go back to the businesses or to the business units that own those domains to say, look, can we migrate it over to our centralized registrar? But in any case as well, we can also see the status of those registrations. That's very much related to logs. Now, just very quickly, what logs mean. If I hover over this, you can see that it says literally client transfer prohibited and client update prohibited. What that means is if I want to action any of those to transfer or update, I need to step up the authentication with my registrar. Without any logs, which is an example that we have at the bottom, that's for demo purposes as well. Without any of those logs, then all I have to do is either social engineering to hack into the account or do a brute force attack on the account on the registrar, and I'll be able to transfer and update those domains. That's why we have a green tick here and a warning there. Then the registration date and when it will expire. Now, in this case from here, okay, what else can I see? I see that there are other subdomains within each of them. So we do that discovery. We believe that starting from this point of, okay, let's add my domains and see what we can discover. In this example, for instance, we could have started only with 2 domains, and then we ended up discovering 5 more. We'll talk about that discovery in a little bit, because it will tie very well with the platform that we have that is interconnected with the second part of the demo. But for now, we're going to focus as well on, okay, now that I can see the domains are in this state, I have one action to do, which is this one over here. What else can I do? So if we click on very quickly on the hosts, I can quickly come here into the filters and filter everything by errors. And this is like a traffic light system, as you can see. What is green is correct, what is amber is something to have a look at, and what's red is probably something that I need to focus on. So if I want to focus on, if I'm a TLS, I'm in charge of web TLS configurations, I'll focus on that. So what have we got? So we have a list of host names. So this is domains and subdomains. The time that it was added to the system, then the status of the domain itself in terms of DNS and DNSSEC, the status when it comes to email configurations, and the status when it comes to web configuration. Now, like I said, if I'm in charge of TLS and I want to focus on fixing everything related to TLS, I can just quickly just sort the list by TLS issues and red issues, and then I can navigate through the list and focus on those per se. Now, there are other DNS issues that are not taken into account in this green tick, and we've put them all together in a single tab. Fortunately for us, obviously, we only have a few very low severity issues, but here we can detect things like dangling DNSs, which means that I have a CNAME record on my DNS that is pointing to a destination, either internal or from a third party, that is not working anymore, it's not available anymore. So that is susceptible for subdomain takeover. There has been a recent study from some universities in the US and here in the UK that they found a lot of organizations that had this issue, and they were able to, obviously in a secure way, but making sure that all of the parties in charge were aware of this, but they were able to take advantage or exploit these dangling DNSs. Now, another part that is that our customers find very valuable is the management of certificates. So in this case, we have 13 network issues. So what you're seeing here is the amount of certificates, how many network locations are in good conditions, advisory, or urgent. The urgent issues in our case is a certificate change. I can just very quickly click on that and realize that's the issue. I don't have anything expiring. But effectively, we can also have a very useful graphical view as to when my certificates are about to expire. So I have a few, one that it will expire in September. So that's the one I need to have a look at to make sure that it's renewed. But at the same time, we can set up notifications, emails, or any other kind of notifications, so that 2 weeks, for example, before the certificate is about to expire, then I can get a notification and get it sorted in time. So at this point, we've also discussed. We like I said at the beginning, everything starts with discovery. You can't protect, you can't monitor what you don't know you have. So in that perspective, I can show you as well here on the settings, we have a section called Discovered Hosts. So in this section, then now you can see that these hosts were not known to me in this example, and that in that case, we found them because they are registered with the same whois information. So this is data that gets collected on a daily basis. We have access, we monitor, irrespective of who's our customer or not, we monitor the certificate transparency logs on a daily basis. Some of those databases have 1.9 billion records. So it's a mammoth work that it gets automated by our own servers, and we have nodes all across the globe for performance sake. And we keep a lightweight version of that metadata, so that when someone becomes a customer, like we do an analysis like this, then we have the basic information about them, like the certificate information in terms of the company name, the registrant, and things like that. So then we cross-reference that with whois information, et cetera, and we get to the point that we can discover more. So in this case, what we do is we mark them all, and we say we own them. We mark them as monitor. And then now those domains will go back to the domain list. Right now, there's not a lot of information on them because I just added them. But more importantly, then this information will get connected, synchronized across with the rest of the platform, so that the rest of the folks on our platform can start monitoring from their own purposes. Like, for instance, the lookalike domain protection solution that we also have. So right now, I'm going to hand it over to Tom so that he can take us through that lookalike protection, domain protection solution.
Perfect. Thanks, Jorge. All right, we'll switch over to on domain here. Perfect. All right. So to Jorge's point, using Harmonize, right, we can discover all those domains and assets, hosts, through various, means of discovery. So what I've done here is we've taken all of the domains discovered in Harmonize and we've uploaded them to on domain. So you can do this via CSV, you could do this via API call. But here's those 4 domains that Jorge had shown through our identity matching solution. So those 4 domains are in here. Prior to that, I already had some domains where we, manually added them, right? But the point is you can use Harmonize to discover all those, and then you put them in here into on domain, and then on domain is going to look for the lookalike domain. So here's our domains. Other things we do, we have a logo engine, so we can train a logo to ultimately be found on any of these lookalike sites, right? So the point is you have a lookalike domain, but are any of them already impersonating you and using your logo? So there's a number of cool features here where we can add different classes depending on if there's a variation in the logo. Maybe you have multiple brands, right? Acquisitions, sister brands, whatever it is, right? Those can all be appeared in here. And it takes a few days for the logo model to train itself. But after that, it'll start cross-referencing the logos that are here on the lookalike page, which we'll look at in a moment. What I want to show on our dashboard, though, that's really interesting. So dashboard, first thing you see when you log in, couple of notifications here on what we classify as high risk that are using your logo or just other high risk parked domains. But what I want to skip down to, just to reiterate the sheer scale that you're ultimately up against, right? So in the last 24 hours, globally, there were 54.2 million new domains registered, right? So just going back to different TLDs, typos, the scripting, right? It's absolutely an infinite scale, and just buying domains defensively is not going to, work in your environment. So just wanted to reiterate that point. All right, so activity. This is where you actually will see, and I'll just zoom in a little bit, all of the different lookalike domains. So there's a lot of different columns for metadata. We'll go through a few of them. But what I want to first do is just kind of sort through to see when these different lookalike domains were detected, right? So this is furthest back from when we set up this demo account, but then we can sort, the other way, right? And even since we prepped for this webinar, right, 10 hours ago, 20 hours ago, there were additional domains found, right? So you can really kind of understand what on domain is doing in terms of, scanning and finding these lookalike domains. There's also really helpful metadata in terms of risk rating, right? So how we can double click into these domains to look at the additional metadata, where we'll see, okay, what's the relation to, right? We have redshift.net versus redlift.nc, and then the solution is going to show you where the differences are, where it last was scanned. But this is where things get, I think, really, interesting. So when you have lookalike domains, there's a difference between the domain is, registered and parked, or the domain is actually, quote unquote, armed in terms of being web ready or email ready. So what does that mean, right? This particular domain has name servers. It's got an A record with, corresponding IP addresses, IPv4, v6, and ultimately it means it's ready to stand up some sort of website or landing page. And the really neat feature of on domain is, one of the neat features is it's not just finding lookalike domains, but it's letting you know proactively in an alerting fashion if a domain has now added the proper DNS records to stand up a website, right? This one was already armed and ready to roll. But also on the email side, right, it can look by SPF and MX records, where this domain has SPF records. It can send mail. It has an MX record. It can receive mail. There's other features in terms of reporting to these different, organizations between NC, SC, and the Google Safe Browsing. This domain happens to, not have any reputational issues, but we have detected that emails are being sent. And this is what's really helpful, right? Is there a screenshot with, the site itself, the landing page, the website? And it can also tell us if, there's an example of the logo being hosted. So we'll look at that more closely. Back to the activity page. So I should have mentioned right now we're looking at unclassified domains, right? So with on-domain, you have the opportunity to really further train the model where you could move particular domains to different statuses, right? So maybe I want to move this over to high risk because we saw that our logo was there. And ultimately what that does is it can further train the model. So let's look at some of the other ones that were already identified as high risk. So one of the ones I'm going to focus on is this particular lookalike. So it's redshift-octa.com, right? So there's definitely been public information cyber attacks where certain, SSO vendors have been impersonated for some of the, biggest cloud-based solutions on the planet, right? And same applies, right? We see this thing as web ready. You can see where, the A records are pointed to, but we also have, a screenshot. So we can drill down on that. And we see that here's the Okta, logo here, and some sort of, login page in terms of SSO credentials, right? So I think this is a good example of honestly probably one of the worst case scenarios that can be found, right? You have a lookalike page with your domain impersonating an Okta page where, if Okta credentials, for example, are compromised, that's got data breach written all over it, right? And we know those are expensive. So what I think is important to think about here is ultimately having a proactive solution to find these different lookalike domains, classify them in terms of different risk ratings, and really being able to identify what's high risk and having the actual opportunity to submit for a takedown, right? So not sure if, any of the folks on this call on the webinar today have dealt with takedowns in the past, but traditionally it's pretty resource intensive. You got to jump through a lot of hoops to really get that going. So now I've switched over to the takedowns page, by the way. And ultimately, when you have to initiate a takedown, a number of things need to happen. You need to work with the registrar of where the domain's registered. You need to work with the hosting provider of where that domain is hosted. And you're probably going to be interfacing with some legal folks on your end who, certainly they can be, tech savvy, right? But this might not be somewhere where they're, really used to having to work in on a legal aspect. So the point is with on domain, right? So kind of zooming out for a moment, we find those lookalikes, we find the logo, but we're also allowing to use that metadata that is gathered from our platform and package it all up into, one package in terms of supporting evidence, right? Sometimes we have the screenshots of the logo, right? Other times there could be .eml files existing from phishing messages you've received, right? Email headers, right? We have a spam trap network integrated into the on-domain solution where we can see if those lookalike domains are sending mail and actually sending to any of the, spam traps in our network, right? So the point here is, yes, we can detect them, but we also work with a partner to submit those takedowns on your behalf. And, sometimes you may have multiple domains that you need to submit takedowns for. And the best you can do on occasion is to, get those takedowns initiated and have those sites taken down. We have a pretty high success rate. Not everything can be taken down, right? Depending on the complexity of the hosting environment. But ultimately, bad actors targeting you and a couple of their sites get taken down, they may move on to the next brand, right? I mean, it's not the greatest solution, but it's real, right? And that's why I think having, sometimes we have customers that come to us that have a current issue at hand, right? Their brand's being spoofed, impersonated. There's a live site up right now. It's stolen credentials. It's harmed customer reputation in some way. But then there's also the proactive solution where you want to make sure that you are looking at all of the lookalike domains in your environment to ultimately make sure that you're staying ahead of the curve, right? This is a solution that can be putting you, on offense, right, rather than, defense. Another thing I wanted to highlight here. So this is a cool feature when we can see the actual number of emails that have been sent from a particular domain. So we'll zoom in on this, this example, right, of the mail sent. It is not considered to be, malicious, right? We have ways of detecting if there was malware. We can look at if there was a particular, spam trap hit or not. So here we go. This is a legitimate email from this brand. It's not us, right? This is an example where we could mark this as low risk or a false positive. But I did want to show this feature set in terms of usually when you're being impersonated, it can be from your own domain, right? But again, there's this whole lookalike concept. So with the lookalike engine and the spam trap network, we can ultimately understand if that bad actor has been impersonating your domain on a lookalike level, that is, and then also seeing what's being sent, right? So there's no PII or anything here, but the goal is, you have a solution that can detect if these emails are being sent. One other feature we should kind of touch on really quick. I believe I set this up. So there's detectable keywords, right? So in the most basic form, we encourage our customers to just add the name of the company or the different brands, right? We added on domain, Redshift with a space. Really, what this does is now these are keywords where the model will look for these keywords to be appearing on any of those lookalike pages, right? And then we can ultimately have some heightened monitoring over those, which is just another good feature that pairs nicely with the logo engine, right? The goal is there's going to be tons of lookalike domains. In this example, for our data set, there's 281. We've seen thousands, tens of thousands, right? So how can you train the model to more accurately find and discover some of these higher and low risk sites, right? And that's by the means of seeing if the logo is on there. There's other ways to sort by keywords, right? Those are really important that we just followed. The other thing I should point out quickly is, we're obviously big on DMARC here, of course, but a lot of these domains, they have reject and quarantine policies, but you can also see which ones, do not. And of course, there's opportunity for those to be spoofed. And that's ultimately what we, can use some of this email spam trap notifications to detect. All right, let's switch gears here. I think we still have some time for questions. Sorry about that. Oh, the other thing we should mention, right? So redshift.com/free assessment, right? That's absolutely where you could get started, using Hardenized, right? What Jorge had demoed there. Let's see, Rachel, did we end up having... Sorry about that, screen share difficulties. Yeah, did we end up having any questions here? Let's see.
We can't hear you, Rachel.
Yeah, there we go. So yeah, thanks, Tom and Jorge, for that outline of how we can actually look for those threats and cyber attacks. So a couple of questions just coming in. So just looking, can I install the same TLS SSL certificate on multiple servers, or is it just single?
No, yes, it is definitely possible. I mean, there are certain dependencies on licensing and all the rest of it, and a certain process or way of installing them, but it's definitely possible. And actually, that's one of the values that our customers see as well in terms of monitoring that, because when we show the detailed information about a certificate, then our customers are able to see where that certificate has been deployed. And actually, I didn't mention during the demo, but also third-party certificates. So those certificates that you rely on to run your businesses from third parties, they are also going to be monitored by the same centralized solution. And if they haven't updated or renewed the certificate, then you would have the tools, monitoring tools, to go back to them and say, look, please renew that. And then you'll see on the deployments tab of that detailed view of the certificate, you'll see where those are deployed so that you understand the impact that it might have if those are not renewed in time.
Okay, great, thanks. And then just one that's come in, he said, I've heard of the man in the middle attack. Is it something that Redshift can help prevent? Can you answer that one?
Definitely, there are many ways of man-in-the-middle attack. I'll give one example, and tell me if you can think of another one, please feel free as well. But many ways, one of them being, I mentioned the dangling DNS attacks. If I hijack a subdomain because of a dangling DNS issue, then people are going to think that they're talking to the organization, and actually the original subdomain will be registered under a valid, with valid credentials on the customer side, on the intended organization. But behind the scenes, they're going to be, as a man-in-the-middle attack, they're going to be stealing the information and controlling all of that traffic through that malfunctional, again, third-party site. Another clear one is we've discovered through, or our customers have discovered through our solution, that they probably had a badly configured certificate in a website, either because it expired or some other reasons. And obviously, if I'm an attacker and I'm able to see that in plain text, then I'll be able to understand what kind of data is going through, let's say, when I'm introducing my credentials, and what goes back to the organization. So by keeping all of that in check, meaning no dangling DNS, everything well configured at the certificate level, and obviously no expired certificates, I'll be able to prevent some of the man-in-the-middle attacks.
Yeah, I think those are good examples. I think that a lot of times when customers are using our hardenized solution, they're kind of doing this initial sweep of all this old hosted infrastructure that maybe had a purpose a month, 2 years ago, something like that, but has a lot of dangling DNS associated with it. Hardenized can help discover, and do that initial sweep, but also moving forward as new infrastructure is rolled out, right? Hardenized can also make sure, as these things are just deployed, that they're, fully compliant and secure.
Okay, great. Okay, so just in the interest of time, thanks, Tom. Thanks, Jorge, again for your time on the webinar today. Just to everyone who joined, we appreciate your time, and we will be sending a link to the recording of the event. So if you want to share that with colleagues who may have missed it, or rewatch any parts of it again, we will be sending that out after the webinar. So I just have to say thanks again, and we look forward to you joining us on our next Espresso demo in a couple of weeks. Thanks very much.
And also we're going to offer free assessment as well. So these assessments that we're doing, a first view, a discovery, we can also offer that to all of the attendants for free. Just get in contact with us, and we'll be able to run those for you as well, so that you can see very similar information, but more importantly, in a lot more depth, with the help of one of the team members, either Tom or me or someone else of the same team.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks all.
Appreciate the time. We'll end the webinar. Thank you.